welcome to week 3 of online learning. I hope you're doing okay. I recognize the challenges that some of you are facing, all of us are facing really at home, trying to do the learning, accessing technology, all those things, and I really appreciate your efforts. I'll just let you know, learning or teaching, teaching from home isn't the easiest either, right? I don't have access to all of my technology that I usually use, having to change lessons a little bit. There's always challenges or like interruptions around home. Hey there, Ryan, how are you doing?
Good.
Good, what are you working on?
Calculus homework.
Your calculus homework. Oh, what do you need help in?
Differential equations.
Differential equations. Well, come on over here and I'll help you out a little bit. Do you know the fundamental theorem of calculus? Yeah, he's pretty good. Good. I'll get you later there, okay? Good. Yeah, so if you look here, right, and you look at the... Sorry about that interruption. Things happen. Anyways, I just wanted to say I really appreciate all your efforts, in all these different learning environments that we're facing. The other thing is, of course, each of our situations are different. You're taking on maybe different roles than you're used to. Maybe you're looking after siblings. Maybe you're responsible for cooking. Maybe you're, doing work outside of the home. And, all those things are important. I mean, I've had to take on some different roles that I'm not usually used to. Oh, just a second there, sorry. Hey there.
Hi, Dad.
Hi.
I have trouble with my...
With your ballet. What are you having trouble with?
I'm having trouble with my first position.
First position. Don't worry, I got this. Okay, so first position, right? The key thing is to have your feet out, okay? Your heels sort of together, and then just sort of bring your arms in like that. Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, good luck with your ballet. Okay, any other questions you can ask me, okay?
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, like I said, I've had to take on some different roles as well, and so I appreciate, what might be going on at your house. Just do your best to get the work done, and let me know if you've got any issues, and I'll do my best to help you out. All right, good luck with week 3, and we'll see you. Hello and welcome to this lesson here, week 3, and we're going to start our adventure story project. So this is going to be a culmination sort of everything that you've learned over the year and putting it together into a larger project, right? A lot of the stuff we've done, maybe 50, 100 lines of code at the most. This will be a little bit on the larger side. So the idea is to create an adventure story, and this is in the vein of the old, maybe in 1970s, early 80s, when adventure games sort of ruled the world, text adventure games. And they were done primarily because of the limits of technology. And this whole idea of interactive fiction, led by a company called Infocom, was sort of the... what everybody sort of aspired to and talked about in terms of gaming at the time, especially on the PC. Obviously, arcades had graphics, but the PC was tended to be text-based. And this remained the same basically through the 1980s until Sierra sort of created this graphic adventure game. So you still had the text input element, but now you had graphics on the screen to help explain the story, and then later on, it sort of just went into point and click, and then eventually the genre kind of died out in terms of popularity. Now I created a adventure game, sort of a point and click type style game. You can check that out here over spring break, and you can give a check of that if you'd like there, so I put the link there. Now, the big idea, of course, is that this project is going to cover, sort of everything that we've learned this year. And so we've learned a lot, right? The idea of sequences, the idea of code running from top to bottom, and then also being able to run through functions, okay? Loops, right? Being able to run through a for loop or like sort of a forever root loop, like while true, and then breaking out of it. The idea of events we haven't really looked at too much. Events primarily being, when you say you click on a button in a thing, but on a screen. But in terms of entering data and so on, making decisions, right? If the person enters some, I want to do this, then that is sort of an event, right? putting data in. Putting in input. Data, we've done different ways of doing data, from very simple things, just holding like an integer or a Boolean or a string in a variable, but also doing things a little bit more complex, like lists, tuples, and dictionaries. Looks like I spelled dictionaries wrong there. So yeah, all those different things, right, you can use to make your game, okay? Conditionals, right? We talked about if and else if and else, being able to run through those, and then also doing the and, or, and not operators. So being able to combine different true and false things, making sure, more than one condition is true for something to happen. The basic mathematical operators we've used, plus, minus, and multiply, divide, and also and modulo as well, I'll mention. We've also learned how to be able to use those with different things like strings and so on, okay? And of course, the big concept there of functions, being able to functionalize your code so that you've got it all into sort of a grouping of like code for a certain function for a certain purpose, and then also being able to use arguments to be able to pass in data and then return or bring out that data as well. And so the whole concept of global versus local variables as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we've learned over the years, and this is kind of your chance to try to apply it in something that's sort of more self-directed. So the idea would be creating some sort of narrative, and it could be a classical sort of medieval adventure kind of game, RPG style sort of game. You could make it anything you want. Science fiction, realistic, whatever sort of takes your interest is. And also, whatever you think would be the most interesting for you to write. I don't want you to lock yourself into a certain genre, but taking whatever your interest is and making that into a bit of a story. It could be sort of going beyond. It doesn't have to be a fanciful adventure story. It could have some sort of purpose to it. If you want to tell them about something, I don't know, about the life living with the virus or whatever the case is, right? Different things. Now, sort of helping you plan, and there's a bit of a planning document, the idea of a decision tree sort of helps you think about how you're going to design the game, okay? And so we've talked about these before, where we sort of branch it out, and this is just an example here. It's a little hard to read here, I know it says, but do you take the red or the blue pill? So this is kind of going from the Matrix. If you take the red pill, right, you become computer food, okay? If you take the blue pill, and then so on and so on. What you notice is that there's a lot of complexity very early on. As soon as you start branching, your games can become pretty complex. So I would always try to make sure that you try to sort of end some of these chains, okay? And the good old way of doing it is, of course, killing you off, okay? Or whatever the case is, the game kind of ends. You just really can't manage 100 different, branches, right? So you have to try to sort of limit that and create maybe some choice, but sometimes that choice is a bit of an illusion, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, another thing that you can do is you could work collaboratively. So if you want to work with somebody else, I know that puts a little bit of a more difficulty since we're not working together, not even teaching together here. But there is options, and I know some of you've got some close friends or friends in the class that you could get together. I've suggested GitHub in the past as a place to hold your code and work from it, but Ripple IT, however we say it, Riplet, in their pricing, right, in their starter one, you can have two people working on the same code. Riplet.it to be able to work on your game together. Obviously, if you're working with somebody, I would expect it to be a little bit more sophisticated than not, okay? So let's just take a look at a couple things. First, one is, classic, and I put a link there, classic text adventure game, Zork, okay? And you can play it online. So, I won't play it here. Okay, so it's loading up. And so the whole idea, right, it really just gives you a description, and then you have to do something. A rubber mat says, I forget, lift mat. Right, now this is a little bit more, open mailbox, that's what I want to do. You might want to give them more sort of direction, right? Give them the options. It will help you out because obviously a text parser is sort of a little bit beyond our purposes here, our abilities. But what you'd want to do is do something like, what would you like to do? And give them the 1, 2, 3 options or whatever the case might be. Okay, but you can play around with some of these text adventure games because they give you a neat sort of perspective on what gaming was back before we could rely on graphics. All right, what else was I going to say? Yes, so let me show you an example here, and I'm going to include one example in it, and you can use this as a basis. Now, one thing you'll notice right here, right at the start, right, they've imported a few of the things. Some of this we didn't talk about directly, although I know a lot of you did play around with OS and sys, but random and time has been brought in. They've created a bunch of functions, okay? So clear screen, this basically just, blanks that screen so that you can refresh it. There's your title. This is done with ASCII art. So if you need to put in some graphics, you can always find ASCII art. Again, castle is just some ASCII art here. And they've defined a few of the commands, north, east, south, west, and so on. The setup here, right, they've created a few global variables, okay? So they've got the name, they've got maybe their health, they've got some of their other options here. I forget what MP stands for. You guys are all yelling at me, telling me what it is. I've forgotten in the moment, but those are some of the things. And they've created a random thing, so setting up the character and so on. And then they've got part of the game here. So the villager, okay, meeting a villager. They've got an enemy that they're battling. MP is magic points, thank you. And then here they've run the program a little bit, okay? So what you should do is try to run through this and see how it works, okay? Try to get a feel for it. You can sort of base your game on this if you want, okay? Obviously this is just a sort of starting a little bit here, okay? So you can't just simply do this. You need to do a bit more than this, quite a bit more than this, okay? But this just gives you an idea. Last year I had another student. Let me just pop this up. This one here. So again, used some of that. Maybe just run this one, right? There it is. So that brings up, obviously it doesn't keep the green, but commands, yes, no, north, south, east, west, inventory. So she's got all those put there. All are lowercase. To see commands list, type help. So whenever you type help, it will do that. Hint, it will be less confusing and save time if you map this out. So obviously it's a little bit more, she's worked on sort of map here. You woke up in a dark room with a pounding headache. So I don't know, maybe I can check my inventory. Oh, I think I have to press, just enter here. You tried to stand up, but a strange heaviness in your limbs make you stagger and fall. Looking down, you see a thick metal band around each of your wrists and ankles. Ooh, it's getting dark. Okay. Each of the rings have 5 small red lights on them, a keyhole in the middle. Okay, try to take them off. So there's the question there. So I would say yes. Suddenly one of the 5 lights on each of the metal rings went out. Ooh, doesn't look too good here. Okay. I probably press enter, started, right, and then so on. So I won't go on with this, but that gives you an idea. Okay, last little bit here, just what I want you to do this week, okay? And I'm not too interested in the programming, okay? But what I would like you to do is just sort of maybe come up with an idea for a story. So this little planning document here, you can just sort of fill it out. Do you plan to work alone? Just put that in. Or if you've got an idea of somebody who you're going to work with, put their name in there. And obviously they should do the same thing. And then so I know who's working with who. What is your basic storyline? So again, this is early days. Things might change. But I'd like you to have thought through a basic idea. Given that, I'd also like you to map out at least a starting decision tree. It doesn't have to be complete, okay? I don't expect the whole game, but I would like you to start to think about how you can, put together the story, how it's going to branch sort of right at the start. So there's a couple ways you could do that. Easiest is you could just draw it on a piece of paper, take a picture of it, and include it on there. You could use, Word has Smart Art, so up here, there's Smart Art. And then over here, there's Creately, which is an online one, and there's more than just one online one. You can try to do that, okay? So it's really just sort of planning a few things out this week. Now, obviously, thinking about how you're going to take advantage of sort of the programming techniques that you've learned so far. Okay, so you need to look at this like in terms of lists and dictionaries and so on. And like I said, I won't ask for any code this week. Okay, but you should begin to think about how you're going to organize it. Okay, and the final project will be sort of marked on the following. And this is just sort of a rough idea here, but I'd like to see some use of obviously the programming that we've learned, okay? And if you include most of the things we've done, and that will obviously be a higher mark there. So those things that I went over from before. Obviously, when I play the game, there should be a good flow, right? I should be able to follow it through. There shouldn't be any errors. So that's sort of 5 points there. And then this is a little bit of judgment on my part, right? The quality of the game in terms of kind of the writing, and I'm not expecting perfect English and amazing storytelling, but there's care been put in, okay? That it's an appropriate length, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. And there's some interest in there. I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting story. Hey, you've done some neat stuff here, okay? So that's a little bit on my judgment there. But these two, right? Looking at, have you used functions and lists and variables, and sort of used all those skills that we've learned. That's kind of what I'm looking for there. And obviously, does it actually run? Okay, so I'll leave that video here, and you can go ahead and try to work on it and get this done this week. So this shouldn't take too long in terms of actual time of working on it. Obviously, you might have to sort of sit down and think about it, right, while you're in the shower or walking the dog or doing whatever, cooking dinner. You can sort of think about maybe what you'd like to write your story on. Okay, let me know if you've got any questions or you need any help. Next week, I'll give you some more ideas about the programming, and we'll sort of move forward from there. All right, good luck with thinking about your story.